Manipulation is an art, a science, an invisible force that governs the world without most people ever realizing it. It's everywhere, in every conversation you have, every ad you see, every choice you think you've made freely. It doesn't matter who you are, what you think you know, or how strong you believe your mind to be. The truth is this: you've already been manipulated, far more times than you can count. And you'll keep being manipulated unless you learn how the game really works. This book is not another generic manual on persuasion. It's not a collection of recycled tips on how to influence others. This is something far more dangerous. This is a black box. Inside are the very same strategies that the brightest and darkest minds have used to control entire societies, build empires, and destroy them with a single word. This is knowledge that, if used properly, will make you capable of bending others' will to your advantage. But if you choose to ignore it, you'll remain just another pawn on the chessboard of those who already master it. Think of every time you made a decision that didn't make sense. Every time someone convinced you to do something you never would have accepted in another moment. Think of the times you felt like your will didn't belong to you, like you were trapped in a story you didn't write. That wasn't coincidence. That was design. From politics to love, from advertising to religion, manipulation has been the ultimate weapon of those who govern the collective mind. They've made us believe our ideas are our own, that our emotions are authentic, that our decisions are spontaneous. But they're not. They've been planted, shaped, guided. And this book is the key to seeing the matrix you've always lived in. If you're reading this, you have two choices: stay blind or wake up. But know this: once you cross this threshold, there's no turning back. You'll never see the world the same way again. You'll never trust the same way again. You'll realize that many of your beliefs, your desires, even your deepest feelings were implanted in your mind without your consent. Because manipulation is not just a technique, it is the foundation of human civilization. Every word in a book, every image on a screen, every phrase spoken by a leader, an influencer, or someone close to you carries intention. There is no communication without purpose. The question isn't if you're being manipulated. The question is who is doing it and why. The best manipulators never look like manipulators. They don't use force or pressure. They make you want to do what they desire. They make you believe the decision was yours, that you always wanted to act that way. It's not magic. It's not circus hypnosis. It's pure science, psychology, language, mental strategy. If you've ever wondered why some people can effortlessly convince others to do what they want, why certain politicians keep selling empty promises and still get re-elected, why some brands make you pay for things you don't even need, the answer is the same. They understand your mind better than you do. The techniques you'll discover in this book are not theories. They're real tools used by the most influential people on earth. Salesmen who get you to buy, leaders who ignite movements, seducers who always get what they want, advertisers who shape culture, entrepreneurs who control markets. They all play at a level where most people don't even know a game is being played. But here's the scariest part. You don't have to be a genius to use manipulation. You don't need a psychology degree or any special skills. You just have to see the structure behind reality, learn the rules of the game, and apply them without fear. Some will say the knowledge you're about to receive is dangerous, that it shouldn't be in just anyone's hands, that it could be misused. And they're right. Because manipulation is a weapon, and like any weapon, it can be used to protect or to destroy, to set you free or to enslave you even further, to make you the architect of your destiny or the executioner of others. What you choose to do with what you're about to learn is up to you, but I hope you'll use it for your growth, to walk toward the life that serves you best, to expand your light in a world that tries to dim it. Just remember, the world is not a fair place. The most honest don't always win. The kindest don't always rise. The ones who understand how the human mind works and use it to their advantage are the ones who prevail. Welcome to the other side of the mirror. Chapter 1. The brain is a programming machine. The year is 1953. In a cold, windowless room lit only by a hanging lamp, a man sits hunched over a metal table. His name is Alexander Petrov, captain of the intelligence service, a patriot by birth, a man who has devoted his entire life to serving his country with honor. But now, he finds himself on the other side of the world, captured by his enemies. What's shocking isn't that he was caught. What's shocking is that they haven't done anything to him. No screaming, no beating, no torture, just conversations. Every day, for hours, they sit him down in that same room. They ask trivial questions. They talk about history. They show him documents. They share versions of reality he had never considered. At first, Alexander laughs it off. He resists. Nothing could make him change his mind. He knows who he is. He knows what's true. But the days go by. The guards speak to him with respect. The interrogators offer him cigarettes. They don't treat him like a prisoner, but like a friend. And slowly, the arguments begin to make more sense. There are files. There are photographs. Then, one tiny detail in his memory doesn't quite add up. Something he was absolutely certain of no longer feels so certain. Maybe things aren't what I thought they were. 1 month later, he begins having nightmares. He wakes in the middle of the night, doubting everything he once believed. What if his country lied to him? What if everything he's ever believed wasn't true? 2 months later, Alexander starts questioning everything. The things he would have once rejected without a second thought now seem worth considering. He feels as if he's learning, as if he's seeing the world more clearly. In his mind, he's no longer a prisoner. He's a free man. 3 months later, his voice doesn't sound the same. His words have changed. He no longer defends his flag with pride, his country, his people, his mission. It all now feels like one big lie. 6 months later, he signs his allegiance to the enemy, not because they forced him, but because he believes it's the right thing to do. 7 months later, he appears on television. In a broadcast to the world, Alexander confesses the crimes of his nation. He speaks of how he's awakened, how the truth has come to light. He swears he's always stood on the right side, that his captors have set him free. But he hasn't been freed. He has been reprogrammed. They didn't beat him. They didn't drug him. They just talked. And now, his mind no longer belongs to him. Alexander Petrov wasn't an isolated case. He wasn't the first, and he wouldn't be the last. What happened to him is the result of a universal truth. The human mind is programmable. The most terrifying part of his story isn't that he was manipulated. It's how he was manipulated. No violence, no threats, no coercion, just words. And that was enough. Your brain is not a machine of logic, no matter how much you want to believe it is. It doesn't make decisions rationally, nor does it evaluate every piece of information with objectivity. Your mind functions like software, constantly updating. It feeds on what it receives and rewrites its code with every experience, every conversation, every story you hear. It doesn't matter how strong you think your will is. If someone knows the right words to say, when to say them, and how to make you process them emotionally, they can enter your mind without you ever noticing. This is how manipulation works, not with shouting, not with threats, but with repetition, with exposure, with logic disguised as certainty. Alexander's mind didn't break overnight. It was a slow process, a thought planted here, another there. Small contradictions in his memory, doubts, barely noticeable at first. And then, once his resistance lowered, once he felt safe in his environment, once he believed everything was under control, the programming was complete. And now the real question is, how many times has this happened to you? How many times have you changed your opinion without realizing the exact moment it shifted? How many times have you passionately defended ideas that weren't even in your mind a few months ago? How many times have you felt that something once ridiculous now makes perfect sense? It's not coincidence, it's not personal growth, it's programming. Ideas don't appear out of nowhere. They are implanted, nurtured, reinforced over time. And the most dangerous part is that you never realize when it's happening. Look at your life. Every time you see an ad and suddenly feel the urge to buy something you hadn't even considered before, programming. Every time a politician convinces you that the problem lies with the other side, even though just months ago you thought the opposite, programming. Every time an influencer sells you an idea you'd never even thought of, but now it seems completely logical, programming. And it's not just in politics or marketing, it's everywhere. Think about the music you listen to. The lyrics of your favorite songs have been repeating in your head for years, shaping the way you perceive love, success, happiness, and pain. Think about the movies and shows you consume. How many of your values have been influenced by the characters you've seen on screen? How many of your aspirations, your fears, your certainties have been molded by stories that someone else designed for you? Now think about social media. Imagine an experiment. Two people create an account on the same platform, on the same day. One starts following pages about motivation, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. The other follows gossip accounts, sensationalist news, and political debates. 2 months later, their realities are completely different. They live in the same world, but their minds inhabit opposite universes. Their beliefs, their concerns, their emotions have been programmed by what they've consumed. Not because they chose it, but because someone else designed the content that was shown to them. Algorithms aren't neutral. They don't show you what interests you. They show you what they want you to be interested in. They know that if they show you certain ideas again and again, eventually you'll accept them. And you won't even notice. This is how manipulation works in the modern world. They don't force you. They don't tell you what to think. They just create the environment so that you reach the conclusions they want you to reach. And when you believe that you've arrived at those ideas all on your own, when you feel certain that no one has manipulated you, when you're convinced you control your own mind, that's when the manipulation has been most effective. If after reading this you still believe your mind is entirely your own, then the manipulation has done its job better than you ever imagined. Because here's the truth no one wants to accept. You have never been the sole owner of your thoughts. Your opinions, your beliefs, your values have all been shaped by external forces. From the family you were born into, the culture that surrounded you, the books you read, the movies you watched, the music you listened to, the teachers you had, the friends you grew up with. Every conversation, every experience, every repetition of an idea in different contexts has programmed your mind to think in a specific way. Most people never realize this. They simply live their lives defending ideas they never consciously chose, acting on impulses that were implanted in them since childhood. But now that you know, you have two options. You can ignore it. Keep living as you always have, believing your thoughts are yours, that your choices are spontaneous, that you are an independent individual making rational decisions. It's the easier path. Nothing changes. The world stays in balance. Or you can choose the other option. You can begin to see the code behind reality. Because if your mind has been programmed without your awareness, it also means you can reprogram it in your favor. You can take control of the process. You can choose which ideas you allow into your mind. You can filter the information you consume, decide which messages you accept and which you reject. But before you can do that, you need to see the game board. And that is the real reason you're here. From this point forward, this book becomes your weapon. Not to make you paranoid, not to make you distrust everything, but to help you learn how to move through a world where everyone is trying to influence you in one way or another. Because if you don't take control of your mind, someone else will. Welcome to the game. This is only the beginning. Chapter 2. How a thought is planted in your mind. We all want to believe our ideas are our own. We like to think we reason independently, that we arrive at our conclusions after deep analysis, and that our beliefs are the product of intelligence and logic. We find comfort in the idea that our decisions are born from our own reasoning, not external influences. But reality is very different. The human mind is not an isolated entity. It's not a sealed-off system where thoughts arise spontaneously. It's a sponge, a structure designed to absorb information and turn it into certainty. From the moment we're born, we begin to soak in the world around us. We don't question what we see. We don't analyze everything we hear. We simply receive, accept, store. The mind doesn't process information objectively. It processes it through context, and that context was created by others. We grow up in families that teach us what's good and what's bad, in societies that define what's acceptable and what isn't, in a world where belief systems were installed long before we ever had the chance to question them. Every word we hear, every image we see, every emotion we feel leaves a mark on the mind. We can't avoid it. Information enters and gets stored, forming the foundation upon which we build our view of the world. And here's where the real trick lies. When we think we're thinking, we're actually just remembering. There's no such thing as a thought untouched by influence. What we call thinking is usually a mix of memories, impressions, and fragments of information that have been planted in our minds over time. People don't think, they remember. They don't build ideas from scratch. They adapt and repeat. What we often call logical reasoning is nothing more than a reflection of things we've heard before. Great manipulators understand this better than anyone. They know that to implant a thought in someone's mind, you don't have to force them to believe something immediately. You just have to expose them to the idea over and over in different contexts, from different angles, until the mind accepts it as if it had always been there. It's a subtle, gradual process, a steady drip of information that eventually turns into certainty. Someone who's never considered an idea might reject it the first time they hear it. But if that same idea appears again and again, in different places, from different voices, it becomes part of their reality. That's when the brain starts processing it not as a possibility, but as a fact. What was once foreign now feels familiar. What was strange becomes logical. This mechanism has been used in politics, advertising, religion, interpersonal relationships, any system that seeks to influence the human mind. And the most dangerous part is that we rarely notice. We don't feel like we're being manipulated because effective manipulation is invisible. There's no sense of pressure, no resistance, just a gradual shift in perception, until one day we passionately defend an idea we hadn't even considered months ago. The mind doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's simply been repeated often enough. If something is said frequently, it becomes truth. This principle has been used by political regimes, corporations, religious leaders, and manipulators in every corner of life. You don't need to prove something is true. You just need to make it sound true long enough. Advertisers know this well. A consumer doesn't buy because they've made a rational choice. They buy because the idea of buying has been implanted through repeated exposure. If you see an ad for a brand once, you might ignore it. But if you see it again and again, if you hear it mentioned in conversation, if someone you admire endorses it, your mind absorbs it. At some point, that brand becomes a logical option for you. even if you've never objectively evaluated whether it's the best one. And when you finally make the purchase, you believe it was your own decision. But in truth, your mind was programmed to buy it. Politics works the same way. A government doesn't need people to think critically. It just needs them to repeat a message without questioning it. All it takes is using certain terms strategically. If a movement is repeatedly described as a threat, people will eventually perceive it that way, even with no evidence. If a person is labeled a certain way, their reputation is sealed in the public mind. Language doesn't just communicate. Language programs. Fear is the most powerful tool for installing ideas in the mind. A government that wants to increase control over its population won't impose new rules immediately. First, it needs people to feel there's a threat, an invisible enemy, a looming danger. The news will start talking about risks, crises, chaos. The same message will be repeated again and again. And when people are afraid, when they start begging for solutions, they'll be handed exactly what was planned from the beginning. Control isn't imposed. People are made to want it. Words are never neutral. They carry intention. It's not the same to say social spending as it is to say investing in people. It's not the same to call a group rebels as it is to call them terrorists. The way something is named defines how it will be perceived. Manipulators understand this perfectly. They don't try to win arguments with logic. They win with emotion and repetition. But manipulation doesn't just happen on a global scale. It happens all the time in personal relationships. An emotional manipulator won't tell you what to think. They'll shape your perception with carefully chosen phrases. If someone wants to make you doubt yourself, they won't say you're insecure. They'll plant the idea with subtle comments. They'll ask why you took so long to reply to a message. They'll suggest that others don't take you seriously. They'll question your judgment in indirect ways. And after hearing it enough times, you'll start to doubt yourself without even realizing where that insecurity came from. A boss who wants you to work extra hours without additional pay won't demand it outright. Instead, they'll remind you again and again how important the project is. They'll tell you they trust you more than anyone else. They'll casually mention how others have sacrificed their time for the company. And in the end, it will be you who chooses to stay late, fully convinced it was your own decision. The power of subtle repetition is immense. It's not about forcing someone to believe something right away. It's about building an environment where that idea becomes inevitable. When you think you arrived at a conclusion on your own, that's when the manipulation has worked best. If someone tells you directly what to think, you're likely to resist. But if they expose you to the same idea slowly, repeatedly, disguised as information, conversation, or entertainment, your mind will absorb it without resistance. And when the day comes that you defend that idea as if it were your own, you won't even remember how it got there. The great strategists of the world know the key to manipulating the masses isn't imposition, it's constant exposure. You don't need to convince someone in a single day. You just need them to be surrounded by the idea long enough. If a message is repeated through multiple sources from different angles in various formats, it becomes an unquestionable truth in the collective mind. Salespeople use this. They don't force you to buy a product. They simply place it in front of you again and again, on television, on social media, in the conversations you overhear. And when you finally choose to buy it, you're convinced it was your spontaneous decision. Political strategists use it too. They don't need people to think logically. They just need to create a repetitive narrative that resonates emotionally with the public. If a lie is told with enough confidence and frequency, it becomes truth for those who hear it. People in relationships use it. A manipulator never directly asks for what they want. They guide you toward it. They plant small doubts, small certainties. They won't force you to change your behavior. They'll just expose you to the idea enough times until you feel it was your own. Once you understand this principle, you begin to see it everywhere. Every time you fiercely defend an idea, pause and ask yourself, when was the first time I heard this? How did I arrive at this conclusion? Is it really mine, or was it planted in my mind without me realizing it? If your mind has been shaped by external forces without your permission, then the most important question you can ask is, which of my thoughts are truly mine? Now that you know how the mechanism works, you have two choices. You can ignore it and keep living as you always have, letting your environment continue to program your mind unnoticed. Or you can begin to take control over what you allow in, filter the information, analyze what you consume, and become aware of how your perception is being shaped in every moment. If you choose the second path, this book will be your tool. Because from now on, you won't just learn how to detect manipulation in others. You'll begin to understand how to use the same techniques to influence your own reality. Welcome to the next level of the game. Chapter 3: The Power of Emotion in Manipulation. A businessman is out celebrating when he receives a call in the middle of the night. On the other end of the line, a supposed police officer informs him of suspicious activity around his house. They say it could be burglars. They say his family might be in danger. Without thinking, the man jumps up, grabs his coat, and gets in his car. He drives at full speed. His mind isn't reasoning, only feeling, fear. His hands tremble on the steering wheel. His heart is pounding. When he arrives, he sees a silhouette in the garden. He doesn't think. He acts. He grabs a flashlight and runs. No analysis, no assessment, only instinct. He yells. His voice cracks in the night air. The figure in the dark runs. He chases after it. In the chaos, he trips over a gas can he always keeps in the garage for weekend barbecues. The gasoline spills without him noticing. His mind is still in panic. All he can think about is protecting his home, his family. He drops the metal flashlight onto the ground, and in a flash, everything ignites. Minutes later, the fire department arrives, but it's too late. The house is gone. Only then, when the flames are out, do they tell him there were never any burglars. It was all a misunderstanding. The shadow he saw in the garden was his own dog, who had run out when it heard the car and came rushing to greet him. He looks at the ashes, at his family, sad and silent. His house destroyed. Their lives turned to smoke, and in that moment, he understands. Fear made him act before he could think. This isn't an isolated case. In different forms, it happens all the time. This is how the human being has always functioned. We are not rational creatures, even if we like to think we are. Emotions are the quickest shortcut to action, the oldest mechanism of survival. Fear is the most obvious, but it's not the only one. Desire, anger, guilt, hope, each one can be used to drive behavior without the person ever stopping to reflect. You felt it yourself. Have you ever made an impulsive decision and later wondered why? Bought something you didn't need, but that felt urgent in the moment? Gotten angry at someone without fully understanding the situation? In each of those moments, emotion took control before thought had a chance to speak. Emotions shape our perception of reality. We don't see the world as it is. We see it as we feel it. Two people can witness the same event and walk away with opposite conclusions simply because their emotions process the experience differently. When an emotion is strong enough, logic gets overridden. The mind doesn't ask if something makes sense. It just reacts. This is the secret manipulators have always used. They don't try to win debates with reason. They don't rely on data. They know logic is weak against a properly targeted emotion. If they can make you feel scared enough, you'll do what they want. If they can make you feel outraged, you'll rally to their cause. If they can spark intense desire in you, You'll spend your money without hesitation. And the worst part is, when it happens, you don't even notice. You think you're acting freely, that your decision is logical, that no one pushed you. But in truth, they've played with your emotions, steered your focus, shaped your reaction, without you realizing. Emotions don't just modify our view of reality, they create it. It doesn't matter how clear the facts are. If someone triggers a strong enough emotion in another person, that emotion becomes the filter through which the world is interpreted. If you've ever had an argument where the other person just wouldn't listen, no matter how rational your points were, you've seen this in action. It's not about logic, it's about emotion. The truth becomes irrelevant once the mind is taken over by intense feeling. Fear turns any threat into something real, even when it isn't. Anger turns anyone into an enemy, regardless of their intention. Guilt makes us accept punishments we never should. Desire blinds us to even the most obvious warnings. When an emotion is strong enough, everything else fades away. Information becomes irrelevant. The rational brain steps aside. All that exists is the urge to act, to respond. And in that state, any thought or idea that reinforces that emotion gets carved into the mind as an absolute truth. Politicians know this. They don't try to persuade with evidence. They persuade with emotion. If they want public support for an unpopular decision, they first manufacture an emotion to justify it. If they want more control over society, they spread fear. If they want violent reactions against their enemies, they generate hate. If they need to distract from a real issue, they fuel outrage over something less important. Look at how it works on social media. How many times have you seen a post or video designed to make you angry? How many times have you felt the urge to share something simply because it stirred indignation, fear, or hope? Viral content isn't the most rational. It's the one that provokes the strongest reaction. And once you fall into that emotion, you become part of the mechanism. You repeat the message, reinforce the narrative, without ever stopping to ask yourself if you're being manipulated. Advertising works the same way. It doesn't sell products, it sells emotion. You don't buy a perfume because you need to smell good. You buy it because they sell you an image of desire, of attraction, of confidence. You don't buy a car for functionality. You buy it because you've been convinced it represents status, success, power. You don't buy clothes because you need them. You buy them because they've implanted the idea that your image defines your worth. Think about a recent commercial you saw. Was it just a technical presentation of the product, or did it try to make you feel something? Most modern ads don't even mention the product until the end. Instead, they tell stories. They show you emotional moments. They make you laugh. They trigger nostalgia. They make you dream of a better life. Because they know that if they can make you feel, they can make you remember. The same mechanism plays out in personal relationships. A manipulator will never give you logical reasons to do what they want. They'll activate an emotion in you. Guilt, to make you feel responsible for their happiness. Sadness, to make you yield to their demands. Anger, to make you react in a way they can later blame you for. Emotions don't just affect perception, they shape memory. An emotionally intense moment is etched more deeply into the mind. A manipulator who knows this can make you remember certain things and forget others. They can tie specific emotions to certain events to reinforce a narrative. They can make you see the past differently, just by changing the emotion with which you remember it. Think about it. How many times has someone reminded you of something you did in a way that didn't match your own memory? Maybe you didn't think it was such a big deal, but the way they described it made you feel guilty. Maybe you didn't believe it mattered, but they made you feel like it did. The emotion with which we remember a moment is what defines how much it impacts us. When emotions are strong enough, they cloud analysis. And when someone learns how to steer those emotions in the right direction, they can get another person to do almost anything without resistance. When an emotion takes over the mind, the person believes they're making their own decision. They don't feel manipulated. They feel like they're responding to undeniable reality, but that reality was carefully constructed around them. If someone wants to make you feel fear, they don't need to put you in real danger. They just need to surround you with messages that reinforce the idea that you're in danger. A news headline here, a comment there, a story about someone who went through something terrible. Little by little, fear grows inside you until it feels so real that the presence or absence of evidence no longer matters. If someone wants you to feel anger, they don't need to attack you directly. They only need to make you feel that something or someone is threatening what you value. They feed a sense of injustice. They remind you again and again of the supposed harm being done to you. They put a face on your outrage. And once the anger is big enough, you'll act without hesitation, certain you're in the right. If someone wants you to feel desire, they don't need to force you. They just have to make you imagine what it feels like to have what they want you to want. They show you images of a better life, of pleasures you could experience, of something you feel is missing. And once that desire is rooted in your mind, you'll do whatever it takes to chase it. In politics, fear is the most powerful weapon. It's no coincidence that every campaign features an enemy to fear. It's no accident that the media regularly warns of looming crises. Fear doesn't just make people accept measures they'd usually reject. It makes them easier to control. A society living in fear is a society easy to manage. In advertising, desire is the main weapon. It's not about selling a product. It's about selling an emotion, a fragrance that makes you feel more desirable, a phone that makes you feel more important, an exclusive membership that makes you feel like part of an elite circle. If the emotion is strong enough, the purchase becomes inevitable. On social media, anger is the key to virality. A fiery comment, a polarizing post, a heated debate. It doesn't matter if the information is true or false. What matters is that it triggers a strong reaction. And the stronger the emotion, the more the content spreads. Social media has turned emotional manipulation into an exact science. It knows which headlines generate the most clicks. It knows which words stir the most outrage. It knows which images provoke the deepest reactions. And it shows you exactly what you need to see to keep reacting. This is the moment where the reader must pause and ask, how many of my emotions have been directed without my awareness? Think about the last time you felt something intensely. Was it genuine or was it induced? Did it come from a real experience or something you saw online? Did you act based on facts or based on how those facts made you feel? If emotions dominate our perception, if they can make us act before we think, then the most important question becomes, how much of your life has been shaped by the feelings of others? Up until now, you've learned that your mind is programmable and that thoughts can be implanted without your notice. Now, you know that emotion is the most powerful channel for making that happen. And if your thoughts have been guided by emotion, then how much of what you are truly belongs to you? From this point forward, every time you feel a strong emotion, question it. Ask where it's coming from. Who benefits from you feeling it? What conclusion is it pushing you toward? Because if you don't take control of your emotions, someone else will. This is the real game of manipulation. And now you can't unsee it. Chapter 4. How to use manipulation to your advantage. Most people see manipulation as something negative, an act of control meant to exploit others. What they fail to understand is that manipulation isn't good or bad in itself. It's a tool, a skill that can be used to create opportunities, build relationships, and achieve goals without generating conflict. Those who don't master it end up being controlled by those who do. The key isn't to reject it, but to understand it and apply it with intelligence and ethics. Think about it for a moment. In every conversation, in every negotiation, in every decision you make, invisible forces are shaping your perception. It's not just about avoiding traps. It's about learning to use the same strategies to influence your environment without falling into deceit or destructive manipulation. There's a moment in every person's life when they realize that simply telling the truth isn't enough to convince others. It could happen during an argument with a friend, a job interview, or a negotiation. Being right is not what wins the game. What wins is how others perceive what you say. If you know how to present your ideas, if you can connect with the right emotions, if you make the other person feel like the decision is theirs, then you've mastered what many fail to see. Persuasion is the real power. In football, there's a strategy perfected by the world's best coaches. Pep Guardiola once said that the perfect goal doesn't come from individual brilliance, but from the entire team working together. The key isn't attacking directly, it's moving the ball, wearing down the opponent, making their players react until they're vulnerable. Then, when they least expect it, the final blow comes. That's manipulation in its purest form. You don't need to force your way. You just need to control the flow of events until the outcome becomes inevitable. The same principle applies in business, politics, and personal relationships. It's not the loudest voice that wins. It's the one who knows how to guide the conversation, who moves the right pieces without being seen, who leads the other person to the conclusion they want without them realizing they've been led. If you understand how manipulation works, you can start to use it in your favor. Not to deceive or exploit others, but to make sure your ideas are heard, to influence how others perceive you, to open the way instead of forcing it. The key lies in strategy. The world doesn't operate on truth. It operates on perception. You can have the best ideas, the most solid arguments, the most brilliant plans. But if you don't know how to present them, if you can't get others to accept them, they're worthless. Well-used manipulation is not deception. It's intelligence. It's not about saying what's true or false. It's about knowing how to say it so that it's heard and embraced. The power doesn't lie in being right. It lies in making others reach the conclusion you want without feeling forced. That's what sets apart great strategists from those who just try to win with brute argument. Imagine you're in a negotiation. If you ask for what you want directly, you'll likely face resistance. But if you create the right context, if you frame the situation so that the other person feels like the decision is theirs, not yours, then you've influenced without conflict. The difference between those who get what they want and those who always give in is how they guide the conversation. This principle applies in every area of life. In personal relationships, many arguments aren't won with better logic, but with the ability to make the other person feel understood before trying to convince them of anything. In business, the best salespeople don't pressure clients. They create the feeling that the product is a solution the client wants to obtain. Think about the last time someone convinced you to do something. Did they pressure you directly, or did they make you believe the decision was yours? Real persuasion doesn't feel like imposition. It feels like revelation. There's a story that illustrates this well. A man wanted his son to spend less time playing video games and more time reading. At first, he used the direct method. He told him reading was important, that video games were a waste of time, that he would lose opportunities if he didn't change. But the boy ignored him. The more he tried to convince him, the stronger the resistance. Until one day, the father changed his strategy. He left an open book on the table with a story that matched the boy's interests. He said nothing, just left it there. A few days later, the boy picked it up out of curiosity. When he finished it, he asked if there were more. Before he knew it, the boy was reading on his own. He wasn't forced. He wasn't pressured. The opportunity was simply made attractive. That's the true art of influence. Not to force, not to pressure, but to create the right environment for the other person to arrive on their own at the decision you wanted. The most effective manipulation strategies are not aggressive or obvious. They're subtle, indirect. They rely on guiding the flow of the conversation, on creating expectations, on making the other person feel they're making the right choice on their own. If you understand this, you can begin using manipulation in your favor in any area of your life. It's not about controlling others. It's about making sure your ideas are heard and embraced. It's not about deception. It's about presenting the truth in the most effective way possible. Once you understand manipulation, you stop being a spectator. You become a strategist. It doesn't mean you should manipulate people into doing things against their will. It means you can influence their perception to build agreements, improve relationships, and position yourself in a world where ideas only matter when they are adopted. The biggest mistake most people make is believing that communication is about words, when in reality, it's about emotions. If you can make someone feel what you want to convey, you've already won. It's not about imposing facts. It's about making those facts land through a favorable emotional lens. Think about social media. The most viral content isn't the most informative or the most profound. It's the content that triggers an immediate emotional reaction: outrage, laughter, fear, surprise. Everything is designed to provoke a response before the user even has time to reflect. If a message strikes the right emotional chord, it spreads effortlessly. The difference between those whose ideas gain traction and those who feel like no one listens lies in how they handle emotion in their communication. If you speak with pure logic, you'll likely meet resistance. But if you can make the other person feel what you're saying, the barrier disappears. Look at how great communicators behave. They don't explain a concept directly. They wrap it in a story. They dress it with mental imagery. They present it in a way that allows people to experience the idea before they ever analyze it. That's how real influence is created. If you want to protect yourself from external manipulation, start by observing how messages affect you. Every time you feel a strong emotion after reading a news article, watching a video, or hearing an opinion, pause and ask, "Why am I feeling this? Was this designed to trigger this reaction in me?" When you begin to question the source of your emotions, you start to reclaim control over your mind. If you want to use manipulation to improve your life, then learn how to present your ideas in a way people want to hear. Don't try to impose your point of view. Make the other person feel as if they arrived at the conclusion themselves. Don't ask for favors directly. Create an environment where the other person wants to help. Don't try to convince with cold logic. Evoke an emotion that naturally leads them in the right direction. The key to all of this is perception. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. It's not what you offer, it's how you present it. It's not what you want someone to do, it's how you make them feel about doing it. Now that you understand this, you're at a turning point. You can keep living unaware of these dynamics, or you can start applying them with intention. You can let the world shape you without noticing, or you can become someone who understands the system and uses it to your advantage. From this day on, every time someone tries to convince you of something, question it. Every time an idea feels too appealing, ask yourself what emotion is fueling it. And when you want to influence someone else, instead of pushing with direct arguments, ask yourself, what emotion do I need to awaken so that acceptance happens naturally? Chapter 5. Manipulation in the Modern World and How to Survive It. The modern world is no longer ruled by force, but by perception. In a single day, an idea can become truth, a lie can be accepted as fact, and a person can go from hero to villain without anything tangible having changed. We live in the age of invisible manipulation, where the strings that control public opinion and human behavior no longer require force or imposition. Today, real power lies in what gets repeated, amplified, and presented as obvious before anyone even thinks to question it. Never in history have human beings been exposed to so many stimuli specifically designed to influence what we think, what we feel, and how we react. Social media has created a society where information is no longer something you search for. It finds you, follows you, infiltrates your mind without your awareness. You don't need to seek answers anymore because the algorithm has already decided what you're going to see, what you're going to believe, and what's going to trigger your reaction. Open any digital platform and you'll notice that the posts you see aren't random. Every image, every video, every headline has been selected to provoke an emotional response. If a topic goes viral, it's not because the entire world spontaneously decided to talk about it. It's because a select group of people, or a programmed system, placed it strategically into the public conversation. Outrage is manufactured. Trends are constructed. Narratives are designed so people feel they're part of a fight they didn't even realize had begun. Manipulation is no longer a conscious act from one person to another. It is an automated system that doesn't need anyone to tell you what to think, because it has built an environment where you arrive at the desired conclusion all on your own. You think you're making choices, but in reality, you're just following the script that was written for you. No violence, no oppression, just data, algorithms, and patterns shaping your mind into a reflection of what others want you to be. Your emotions are no longer truly yours. They are conditioned responses to programmed stimuli meant to make you act in a very specific way. If a message makes you feel afraid, you'll act cautiously. If it makes you feel outraged, you'll respond instantly. If it makes you feel validated, you'll double down on your beliefs. And in none of these cases will you stop to ask whether the emotion you felt was truly yours, or if it was planted. What used to take years to build can now be dismantled in minutes. A public figure can be destroyed in a single night with a fabricated scandal. A company can lose millions over a negative narrative artificially boosted. An entire country can be driven into war by the perception of a threat that may never have existed. The great empires of the past needed armies, weapons, and resources to conquer. Modern empires don't need any of that. They only need to control the story that gets told. Modern manipulation is so subtle that even those who believe themselves well-informed are often its most loyal victims. The idea that anyone has a fully rational, independent opinion has become a myth. In reality, most opinions don't arise from critical thinking, but from constant exposure to the same message in different forms. Repetition is the key. Something doesn't have to be true. It just needs to be repeated enough times to feel undeniable. The system no longer needs to convince you directly. It only needs to create an environment where the false feels logical, the unreal feels natural, and truth blends into perception until both are indistinguishable. This is accomplished through several mechanisms working simultaneously without you even noticing. The first is content personalization. Each person lives in a digital universe tailored to reinforce their beliefs. If you believe something, algorithms will show you more content that confirms your stance, while filtering out opposing views. You don't need to seek confirmation. It comes to you. Soon, you'll believe everyone thinks like you, that your version of reality is the only one. It's perfect manipulation, because it doesn't feel imposed, it feels discovered. The second mechanism is fragmentation of information. In the digital age, speed has replaced depth. People no longer read, they skim. They no longer analyze, they react. Platforms have designed a world where information is consumed in seconds, without context or nuance. Complexity has been reduced to short phrases, flashy images, and headlines crafted to provoke immediate response. You don't need to know the full story to feel like you have an opinion about it. One viral comment, one edited clip, one tweet that confirms your bias is enough. The third mechanism is language manipulation. It's not just about what's said, but how it's said. Carefully chosen words can shift the perception of an event without altering a single fact. A protest can be seen as an act of courage or as a violent riot, depending on the narrative. A scandal can be downplayed with a euphemism or intensified with a charged word. You don't have to change reality, just change how people talk about it. The fourth mechanism is the creation of enemies. Nothing unites people faster than a common foe. If you can get one social group to blame another for their problems, you've achieved perfect manipulation. Political campaigns, media strategies, mass movements, they all rely on this principle. When people are busy hating an enemy, they stop questioning what's really going on. Collective outrage is powerful because it makes logic feel dangerous and replaces individual analysis with groupthink. All these mechanisms work together, crafting a society where most people have no idea they're living inside a fabricated perception bubble. They believe they're making their own decisions, when in reality, they're simply following the path others have drawn for them. The greatest danger of modern manipulation is that it has succeeded in making people believe they are free, when in fact, they are operating within a system of control without visible walls. Traditional manipulation needed clear restrictions, direct censorship, explicit coercion. Today's manipulation needs none of that. It only needs to shape the conversation and control the flow of information so that the majority's decisions match exactly what the system intended. To survive in a world designed to manipulate you, the first step is to accept that you've already been manipulated. There is no total escape, only awareness. This isn't about living in paranoia. It's about learning to see the game as it's being played. The people who believe they are outside the system are often the most trapped inside it. True power is not in avoiding manipulation. It's in detecting it and deciding whether to play by its rules or break them. The greatest shield against manipulation is critical thinking. Questioning doesn't mean rejecting everything. It means learning to ask the right questions. Every time you encounter information that sparks a strong emotional reaction, pause. Ask yourself, why is this making me feel this way? Who benefits from me reacting like this? How many times have I seen this same message repeated in different forms? If the information you consume always confirms your beliefs and never challenges them, you're probably not thinking, you're just repeating. Social media is designed to exploit emotional response. Every time you feel outrage, every time you feel the urge to share something, every time a piece of content triggers a visceral reaction, there's a system behind it that was built to make that happen. The best way to avoid being manipulated by these stimuli is to slow down your response. Don't share without analyzing. Don't take sides without understanding the full context. Don't get swept up in the immediate narrative. Another line of defense is taking control of the information you consume. If everything you read, watch, and listen to comes from the same sources, then you're not being informed. You're being conditioned. Don't rely on algorithms to decide what information reaches you. Seek out opposing points of view, deliberately. Not to change your opinion, but to ensure that you've truly considered every perspective before choosing what to believe. Manipulation doesn't just happen in what is said, it also lives in what's left unsaid. What doesn't make the headlines, what never becomes a trend, what gets systematically ignored, is just as important as what gets amplified. Learn to spot the gaps. If everyone is talking about one particular topic, ask yourself, what other story is being pushed out of the conversation? But beyond external information, the most dangerous kind of manipulation happens inside your own mind. If you don't understand how your emotions affect your decisions, then you don't truly have control over them. If you want to become immune to modern manipulation, you have to learn to recognize your own biases. Ask yourself why you think the way you think. What experiences have shaped your beliefs? What ideas have you accepted without ever questioning? The best way to free yourself from manipulation isn't to isolate yourself from the world. It's to train your mind so it can't be easily targeted. Don't aim to avoid manipulation. Aim to recognize it in real time. Don't rush to react. Learn to observe. Don't consume information passively. Make active decisions about what you allow into your mind and what you don't. The modern world is not designed to help you think for yourself. It's designed to make you react, to make you consume, to pull you into narratives you didn't write. If you want to take back control, you have to become smarter than the system. From this moment on, every time you see a viral news story, every time something triggers an immediate emotional reaction, every time you feel yourself being guided toward a conclusion you haven't truly examined, pause, observe, question. Because the only way not to be manipulated is to be the one in charge of your own mind. If you don't decide for yourself, someone else will do it for you. Final chapter. Why are you running? A man rushes into a taxi, gives the driver an address, and buries his face in his phone. He doesn't look outside, doesn't pay attention to the road. He trusts that the driver will take him where he asked. Time passes. Suddenly, he looks up. Nothing is familiar. "Where are we going?" he asks, alarmed. The driver smiles. "You gave me the destination, but you never told me how you wanted to get there." Panic sets in. The route the driver has taken is long, confusing, senseless, and then it hits him. He's been living like this for years, getting into taxis without asking where they're going, letting life drive without ever asking if the destination is really his, and more importantly, how he wants to get there. How many times have we done the same? We're born, and before we know it, we're already running. A race we never chose, yet one we sprint through in desperation. We want to arrive somewhere, but we never stop to ask if it's where we want to go. We grow up with unexamined beliefs, implanted desires, unexplored fears. They taught us that life is a straight path, that we must advance, that we must play by the rules, without ever asking who wrote them. We've been manipulated into believing life is a checklist of goals to reach in order to be successful, accepted, worthy. We were sold the idea that there's only one right way to live, and so we spend years running toward destinations chosen by others. But have you ever truly stopped to ask yourself if the path you're on is really yours? If the goals you're chasing genuinely come from within, or if they're just reflections of what the world planted in your mind? How many of your decisions felt like your own, but were really just echoes of what others expected from you? The deepest manipulation isn't the one coming from the media, governments, or advertisers. The most insidious manipulation is the one that convinces you that the life you're living is your only option. They taught us that success means money, recognition, stability. But who defined those rules? Who decided that the meaning of life is to accumulate, to climb, to fit in? What happens if you don't want to play that game? The problem isn't that society manipulates you. The problem is that it does it so well you don't even realize you've been programmed to want what you want. How many things have you done without knowing why? How many of your desires aren't truly yours, but were implanted without your awareness? How many decisions have you made thinking they were free, when in truth they were pre-written programs loaded into your mind before you were even conscious of yourself? Look closely. The whole world is designed to keep you from asking those questions, to distract you with things that seem important, but aren't. They tell you to study, get a good job, start a family, build stability, buy a house, travel, collect experiences, achieve success. But what the hell does success even mean? Who defined that word for you? Who decided that all of this is what you should want? The answer is simple. The system, society, family, culture, religion, economics, social media. Everything has been designed to keep you running after something, to make you feel like something's always missing, that you always need more, that you're never enough. The game is rigged to keep you feeling empty. Sex is one of the most powerful tools of manipulation. We've been made to believe sex is a goal, that pleasure is a destination, that validation through the body is part of our identity. The desire industry has turned sex into a commodity, a product to consume, a mechanism of control. It's no coincidence that brands use flawless bodies to sell everything, that viral content is often laced with sexuality, that promiscuity or repression are used as labels to categorize people. Sex should be a form of freedom, but it's been turned into a prison. Some live obsessed with attaining it. Others are terrified of wanting it. Others use it as a weapon of power. And while everyone argues about it, no one realizes that human desire has been converted into a machine of consumption and control. Religion is another major program of manipulation. It doesn't matter what you believe in, what God you trust, what dogma you follow. The structure is always the same: fear of punishment, promise of reward, blind obedience to a belief system rarely questioned. Since the dawn of humanity, faith has been used as a form of control. You don't need chains if you convince someone it's their duty to remain inside the limits you imposed. How many times have you believed something was sinful, something was wrong, something would damn you, without ever questioning it? How many rules have you followed without understanding them, simply because someone told you that's how it's supposed to be? It doesn't matter if you believe in God or not. The mental structure that's been implanted is the same. Follow the path. Don't deviate. Obey without asking. And if it's not religion, it's the craving for recognition. We've been programmed to live for others' approval. We want to be validated, seen, acknowledged. That's why we obsess over likes, followers, reactions. Social media has perfected the manipulation of the ego. It makes you feel like you have power, but really it just keeps you inside the herd. Trends are another program of control. Today you're told to dress a certain way. Tomorrow, it changes. Today you're expected to think one way. Tomorrow the narrative shifts. And the most surprising part, people don't even notice. They believe they're choosing, that they have their own identity. But in truth, they're simply following the path that's been laid out before them. The herd changes direction, and you change with it without ever questioning why. Think about how many trends you've followed without realizing it. How many things you've done simply because that's just how it is, or everyone's doing it, or that's what's expected. How much of you is truly yours, and how much is just a reflection of what the world imposed on you? The real problem isn't that the world manipulates us. The real problem is that it's done it so well, we think we're free, when we're actually just following the script we were handed. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that everything you've chased, everything you've believed, everything you've done, wasn't really your choice. That every decision you made was a programmed response. That the path you've been following wasn't chosen. It was installed piece by piece through stories, fears, and promises of happiness that never arrive. Society taught you to run without asking where to. Since childhood, you've been told what to want, what to do, what to avoid. You were sold an idea of success, an idea of failure, and you never stopped to ask if those definitions were really yours. Look at your life now. Ask yourself, how many things have I done just because that's what people do? Maybe you studied a degree that doesn't fulfill you, but it was the right thing to do. Maybe you're part of a religion you don't even believe in because it's what your family follows. Maybe you're in a relationship that doesn't make you happy, but you've already invested too much to walk away. Maybe you work a job you hate, but it pays the bills. What if you stopped? What if you stopped running? That is the system's greatest fear, that you realize you don't have to play this game, that you don't need to chase validation, acceptance, or recognition, that you can wake up and decide that you write the rules of your life. The meaning of life is not to accumulate. It's not to be admired. It's not to fulfill the world's expectations. The meaning of life is to go to sleep without fear and to wake up without anxiety. Once you understand this, you become untouchable. You can no longer be manipulated by fear because you no longer need the security they dangle in front of you. You can no longer be manipulated by desire because you no longer need to fill a void with something outside yourself. You can no longer be manipulated by guilt because you no longer follow rules imposed by others, only the ones you consciously choose. Freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is not being a slave to anything or anyone, not even your own thoughts. So now what? If you've made it this far, you've seen manipulation from every angle. You've learned how thoughts are implanted, how emotions are weaponized, how social structures are engineered to keep you running without questioning. But the question that matters now is this: what are you going to do with this information? Knowing isn't enough. Waking up to the manipulation doesn't make you free. There are many who understand how the game works, and yet they stay trapped inside it. They live with resentment because they see the cage but don't know how to escape it. They think they're awake, but they're still reacting exactly how the system wants them to. They still seek validation. They still live in fear. They still chase things they don't need. Waking up isn't about seeing the manipulation. It's about letting it go. It's deciding you won't play by the rules they handed you. It's choosing not to run after what isn't yours. It's standing still in the middle of the race and asking for the first time, what do I really want? Not what they told you to want. Not what society applauds. Not what you've been conditioned to desire. What you truly want. Most people never ask themselves that question. They die without ever having lived their own life. They spend years stuck in a routine, in a prefab identity, in an existence that never belonged to them. And the most tragic part? They don't even know it. But you no longer have that excuse. Now you know. Now you see the trap. And once you've seen the trap, you can never go back. From today on, every decision you make, every thought you think, every impulse you feel becomes an opportunity to ask, is this really me or is it a program? If you can ask yourself that question every day, if you can stay conscious of how the world tries to shape you, then you will have reached something very few ever do: an unshakable mind.